Okay, it's 10:03. That means it's time to pass the baton over to Dr. Ray to give some introductions. So shoot around, John.
Thank you, JC, and good morning. Hello to everyone. My name is Chitranjan Ray, as JC said. I'm the director of Nebraska Water Center. I'm looking forward to the seminar today on water management in Illinois perspective. I cannot think of two more qualified people to present today's seminar. Together they have maybe over 80 years of experience in the area of surface water and groundwater and hydrogeology. I got to know both of them personally during my years at the University of Illinois. In fact, I was a student and working at the Illinois Water Survey. And in fact, Laura, her husband, and myself and my other colleague, Ed Maynard, we are probably at that time looking at Dick as a mentor, and he was the section head that time in the hydrogeology in Illinois Geological Survey. So without further ado, I word on the two speakers. Laura Aquifer is the state hydrologist of Illinois at the University of Illinois, is a Prairie Research Institute. I still, I guess, keep on telling that still Illinois State Water Survey is part of the institute and one of the 5 scientific surveys at the institute. Laura's expertise is in surface water area, monitoring emerging water-related issues. Especially, they are one of the pioneers, if you recall, when this whole issue of surface runoff, Gulf hypoxia, monitoring tile effluents, all those. Laura has been doing those for what, 25 plus years, I would say. And then she manages the whole hydrology section there. They do a lot of work on river mechanics, hydraulics too. So many things I cannot even remember now. And she has over 30 plus years of experience in multi-scale, big city problems to rural problems, everything she has handled. And the same token, Dick Berg, he's with the Illinois State Geological Survey. He's the state geologist and director of the USGS, Illinois State Geological Survey. So that's one of the, he's going to talk a little bit about the 5 surveys. I'm not going to steal any thunder from him, but he's well known for his work on environmental geology, glacial stratigraphy, geologic mapping, the soil genesis, all those geomorphology type things. And we used to learn a lot of things from him when we were doing a large project. It was a very collaborative and well-intended project looking at the pesticide occurrence in groundwater, where the reliance was on hydrogeology. Both Illinois State Geological Survey and Water Survey were working on that beginning from the late 80s. So with that, I'm going to hand over the the virtual floor to Laura and Dick. So you can follow the assigned order as you wish. Thank you.
Okay, well, I guess I'm going first here, so. Interesting. That's not my screen. There we go. That's not my screen. I'm not sure what's going on here. Huh. Jesse, I'm not sure what's going on here.
Dick, I think we can see your screen. Maybe you need to go up to view option.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we see. Yeah.
Okay.
Go to the presentation mode. It's in the slide.
Yeah. Okay. And I do want to get rid of that. Okay, well, thank you very much. I'm Dick Berg. I'm director of the Geological Survey at Illinois. And I really want to give you a little talk on 3D geological mapping and modeling and how that's really foundational for the groundwater assessments that are done in the state, as well as a whole lot of other things. And just as a brief introduction, You know, Chittaranjan mentioned that we are 5 surveys, about 900 scientists. We're in the Prairie Research Institute now. We've been around for a long time, us since the mid 1800s. Water survey since 1895. We are part of DNR until about 12 years ago. And now we are officially part of the University of Illinois, part of the Prairie Research Institute. And our mission, like a lot of missions of geological surveys and water survey, to provide the citizens of the state with good information that's unbiased and helps with the economy of the state and public safety. And also emphasize that we're non-regulatory. There are some surveys that are regulatory, California, Alabama. We are not. We conduct a lot of applied and basic research and provide this information and tools to regulatory agencies. We've worked very closely with EPA, for example, as well as many others. But really what I want to talk about is geological mapping, you know, what it is that we do, who does it, and why we do it. Well, actually, we do it. I think we all know what a geological map is. Geological map is off to the right here. You know, we're looking at portraying distribution, composition, structure, geologic materials, and using various line patterns, colors, we show what the geology is. Now, a 3D model, on the other hand, you know, shows the same thing, but really emphasizing the subsurface. And what are the drivers for this? Well, water is a big part of it, and environmental protection of land and water. Infrastructure development and maintenance is a big deal, particularly as we hopefully move into some kind of infrastructure bill on the part of the federal government and the state government, and your state government as well. And then economic development. I mean, geological surveys worldwide were founded on the basis of economic development, bringing minerals home or exploring for minerals in your state or your jurisdiction, and also you know, regarding sustainable resource land use planning, which is also a big deal for economic development. So what are the issues that we're really dealing with here? We are a glacial state. I mean, Nebraska is a glacial state too, but ours is thicker. And the issue that we have is that there's layers of glacial sediment, thick, thin, absent. The ice carried debris of various compositions. But every time the glacier came and went, it left an ancient landscape with hills, valleys, rivers, streams. And then these old landscapes are overridden, and some aspects were preserved, others were completely wiped out. And then we have, you know, weathering and erosion and deposition acting on these. So it ends up being, you know, a real mess to try to figure out. We know from, if we look at our aquifers, is almost a haphazard, and I did put that in quotation marks because it's not haphazard, but it is very complex. We know that sand and gravel was deposited in channels at different times, at different depths, and it's really challenging to understand. And in order to understand it, you have to look at drill holes, you have to drill your own holes, water wells, geophysics, outcrops, and drawing the boundaries of where these aquifers are and understanding the properties. It's, you know, you really have to nail it pretty well, because in the Midwest here, in the glaciated portion of the Midwest, we have about a 50% of people are relying on these aquifers for, you know, for drinking water and also for aggregate minerals. And this is why it's so complex. With, you know, these two diagrams here, you can see a glacier receding. You can see braided streams, fans, moraines, deltas, ponded lakes. Well, where are your aquifers? Well, your aquifers would be with your braided streams, your fans, and your delta. Your ponded lakes, not so much. That's where you're going to be getting a lot of fine-grained lake sediment. Now imagine another glacier coming and piled similar arrangement on top of this, and then another one on top of this. And that's what we have in Illinois. So it ends up being very complex to try to figure out. So we're basically going from the upper left here to the lower right. And Illinois and Iowa actually are the two states that have most of their original landscape modified by human interaction, whether it be agricultural or building cities. And this is really the issue that we're dealing with. You know, sometimes the bedrock is shallow, sometimes it's down deeper, sometimes there's aquifers, sometimes there's not. And then how do you balance that? Well, to the rescue here is 3D geological mapping and modeling. And we actually formed a coalition called the Great Lakes Geological Mapping Coalition. the 8 Great Lakes states and the province of Ontario. And the issues here and why we formed this back in 1997 or 1998 was that a whole bunch of folks really have to, they have a lot of public, competing public policy options involving water and land. And we need unbiased and very uniform information to supply to the people that are going to be using this for making land and water decisions. And we really have to be able to balance that economic development or economic growth with the natural resource needs and do this in a sustainable manner. So you're trying to, you know, grow the economy, but you're also trying to protect the environment at the same time. So it's a real balancing act. You don't want to overprotect the areas that don't need it, nor underprotect the areas that do. So I want to show you some examples. And this is a little map here is northeastern Illinois. And the areas in blue are the areas that use water from Lake Michigan. The areas in yellow are the communities that rely 100% on groundwater. So these are the 4 counties here that I have that are highlighted are counties where we've done 3D geological mapping and modeling. And I want to highlight the one shown in yellow and really start with Will County, which is the most recent modeling that we've done. And I don't have a whole lot of images of that because it is so recent. But just to give you an idea on the amount of effort that goes into doing one of these county assessments. I mean, this Will County here, it's taken about 4 to 5 years to do, evaluating almost 30,000 borehole records from water wells, did about 6,000 feet of drilling at over 100 sites, over 8 miles of geophysics, and conducted numerous cross sections and created a 3D model. And it's this level of effort that really went into development of those other models in those 3 counties, which I'll emphasize in just a second. For Will County here, you can see all these red dots on Will County, and this is south and southwest of Chicago. The city of Joliet, that you've probably heard about, sits in the northwestern corner here. Population of about 700,000. This is projected to be the 2nd largest county in the state, next to Cook County, which houses Chicago in the next 20 years. And there was a 3D model that was developed. This is really just a kind of a crummy image that I have of one of the screenshots of one of the beginnings of a 3D model. So this model is done. We work very closely with the county, with the various county agencies, which will be using this for economic development and water resource evaluations. One of the early counties we did was Kane County, which is just to the west of Chicago. And what I want to do here is just show you the layers of information that went into building up the 3-dimensional geology in Kane County. This is the bedrock surface. North is to the upper part of the diagram. The yellow areas are high, the blue areas are low. You can see a pre-existing channel cut into the bedrock here. I'm just going to build this up, and you're going to see some of the complexity that we deal with. And laying on top of the bedrock here is a diamicton or a glacial till. The outline of the county is shown by the townships, those 15 townships, and it pretty much covers the whole county. On top of that is a sand and gravel, which is an aquifer. On top of that is yet another glacial till or a diamicton called the Tiscoa. Again, silty clay, it's non-aquifer material. Above that is another outwash, another potential aquifer. On top of that is another diamicton, and these are anywhere from 20 to 100 feet thick. Above that is another sand and gravel or an outwash off to the eastern part of the county. On top of that, another diamicton. On top of that, another sand and gravel, another diamicton, another outwash, another diamicton. And then sitting at land surface are lacustrine deposits or lake sediments, again, which are all related to the last glaciation. And then often associated with these lake deposits will be a sand and gravel at land surface. So you can see sand and gravel at land surface covers probably 20 or 25% of the county. Put all that together into a 3D model or a block diagram, which you can cut and slice and dice any way you want. And the whole goal of this exercise, working very closely with the county, was for water resource management. There were, I think, 32 or 33 communities in this county, which were all competing for the water resources. So the goal was really to provide all parties with the same information so that they wouldn't be fighting one another for water resource management. The second county I want to show you is McHenry County. This is northwest of Chicago, borders Wisconsin to the north. And you're looking at underneath land surface, and you're looking at water wells poking through the surface. You can see at various depths, the various colors represent the different types of geological materials. There's a line of geophysics that you see in there that we tie in using the borehole logs. Here's our 3D geologic model. Wisconsin is off to the northwest. The light green area there is called the Marengo Moraine. It's about 300 feet thick. It's a diamicton. No aquifers in that. The areas in yellow and brown are the aquifers. And you can pull apart that model. The yellows, the browns, and the oranges are your aquifers. You can make numerous cross sections to see what the subsurface looks like. And we did create for the county a user interface, a subsurface viewer, where you can extract geologic cross sections along predetermined cross sections, as this little diagram shows, or you can create your own. You can extract simulated borings, or if you draw your cursor along a real boring, the real information will show up. And you can extract horizontal elevation slices. In other words, what is it like 50 feet below the surface? You can carve off 50 feet beneath the surface, and this is what you'd see, which is important for excavation, for water well drilling, and evaluating potential water resources. You can also construct 2D maps from the 3D model. This is a map that shows the sand and gravel aquifer at land surface, and the highlighted area off to the right here shows you where that is along the line of cross section. You can go down to 50 to 100 feet, and here's a depiction of the distribution of another aquifer. We call it the Pearl Ashmore Aquifer, and it exists in again surrounded by that circle there. About 50 feet beneath the surface, you can see where that aquifer occurs. And then, 300 to 400 feet below the surface, there's a sand and gravel that sits on the bedrock, and it's an aquifer. The groundwater between that aquifer and the bedrock communicates, so it's an entire aquifer unit, and that exists here. In fact, where it's below that moraine, it's as much as 500 feet beneath the surface. So it's down there a ways. And this is all extractable out of the 3D model. The other thing that we produced for the county here was an aquifer sensitivity map based on the depth of the uppermost aquifer. So the areas in red here have high sensitivity. Aquifers are at or near land surface. The blue areas, low sensitivity. The deep or no aquifers. You can see along that blue moraine there, off along the western side, there's a very low potential for contamination. And actually, we did a map similar to this for the entire state of Illinois, which the state of EPA used, and switched the map around so that the areas of low sensitivity were the ones where they were seeing a higher incidence of contamination of surface water, because you'd expect more runoff to occur. So it was a use of this kind of information that, you provide this information to state agencies, and they get then to interpret it how they would like to interpret it, and for reasons that you didn't even manage that they'd be using it for. Then along came the water survey, which is where Chittaranjan worked and where Laura works, and we worked closely with them, and they produced a groundwater report for McHenry County looking at potentiometric surface mapping. And this is really the bottom line of my presentation. If there's any takeaway message, this is it. That once you go ahead and you map your aquifers and your non-aquifers, and you map your various layers, you produce your model, then you can really optimize the groundwater assessments, because you have your boundaries, you have your thicknesses, and you have a lot of understanding of the characteristics of those aquifers as far as transmissivity and aquifer potential. So this is what we did. Here's that map of Surficial Aquifer that I showed you before. And what the water survey did was it did a mass water level measurement of hundreds of wells in the county. and they produced a potentiometric surface map. This one here is based on 71 measurements. Areas in blue are the streams that throughout the county. If you look at this aquifer that's 50 to 100 feet below the surface, here was a potentiometric surface map associated with that county aquifer map, over 100 measurements, and you can see at the highs and the lows here, you can see that there's movement toward discharge to these streams. And then the deeper aquifer, this is the one that's buried at 300 to 400 feet and also communicates with the bedrock. Therefore, the potentiometric surface map is the entire county. The green line down the middle divides groundwater sheds, which is, and it's really an issue that it's a real serious one in Illinois, because the groundwater shed is not going to be the same as the surface watershed, particularly of the Great Lakes. The groundwater shed is somewhere between the border of Lake Michigan and the city of Rockford, which is 90 miles away. So here's a groundwater shed. This is based on over 250 measurements. And the driver here was clearly contaminant transport. You're still getting groundwater flow directions toward the streams, and 90% of the low base flow is from groundwater discharge. And this was used almost immediately by the county, because right about in the middle of this map is a groundwater high, but there was a subdivision that was going in just to the northeast of the middle part of the map. And there was a decision made, well, we're going to put in private wells and septics or a municipal supply. Well, there's a Superfund site right about in the middle of the map. So they were afraid of, potential contamination from that Superfund site, and they decided to go with the municipal supply. Water Survey also produced, this transmissivity map for all quaternary aquifers in the upper bedrock aquifer. Red area is high, yellow area is low. And then lastly, did simulated drawdown tests for the years 2009, 2030, and 2050. First of all, looking at that Surficial Aquifer, which isn't used a whole lot as a groundwater supply. However, the two lower aquifers are. Here's that buried aquifer at 50 to 100 feet. And you can see over that 41-year period, considerable expansion of the use of that aquifer. And also the case for the deeper aquifer, which is used quite extensively, particularly in the southeastern part of the county. The western part of the county is more rural. The southeastern part of the county is growing subdivisions. So that's really the framework that I want to leave you with. This is really basic information provided to the groundwater person, in order to optimize their decisions. And I just added this slide, 15 minutes ago, that if you want to get a real international perspective on this, there is going to be a webinar. It's not announced yet, but you can copy through the American Geosciences Institute. An international perspective on this is societal needs responding to 3D geology. Groundwater is a major emphasis. There'll be a panel discussion on the second day. On the first day, some talks by some noted international people from the US, Canada, and Europe. So I'll leave you with that, and I'll leave this up if you want to copy the URL on that. Thank you very much.
Okay, so Laura, we'll turn things over to you.
I want to make sure I'm grabbing the right screen. Okay, is everybody seeing that?
Yes.
Okay, great. I appreciate Dick taking the lead, on introducing the surveys within the Prairie Research Institute. As he had said, the Water Survey was established in 1895, and actually this year is our 125th anniversary, and we managed to get one celebratory seminar in our seminar series in before COVID hit. So we're hoping maybe next year might work out a little bit better. We'll probably start advertising it as 125+1 anniversary celebration, but I wanted to put in that spot in there. I'm going to give a little bit more of an overview on a little bit of Illinois. Everybody, I think compared to Nebraska, we're water plenty. I think we're literally surrounded by water. It's, we either, we don't have a water body along the north side with Wisconsin and along the east a little bit with Indiana, but otherwise we're surrounded by Lake Michigan, Mississippi River, the Ohio River to the south, and the Wabash River to the southeast. And also we actually have a Lake Michigan diversion so that we have a very intricate Chicago area waterway system up here, which essentially connects us, with the St. Lawrence Seaway Atlantic industrial waterway. And so we can actually get things all the way down through the Illinois River, connecting the Mississippi River, and get connected to the Gulf of Mexico. So we're surrounded by water, and water runs through us as well. So I wanted to give an idea too, is that most of Illinois does drain to the Mississippi River. Of course, the Illinois River does, but we do have this slice of the southeast that does flow into the Ohio River before it combines with the Mississippi at the very tip of Illinois, just to give you a perspective on that. Just also similarities. As far as Illinois, we have about 70% of our land area is in agriculture, which is similar to a bit on the eastern side of Nebraska. But also, we probably have a lot more rain than you do. It ranges from 32 inches a year in the north to 48 inches. But then it kind of reverses. In the snowfall, we can accumulate on an annual average of about 10 inches in the south and about 36 inches in the north. So it's kind of flips on that level there. Also, I want to do some comparison. I found a station that we have, the Illinois River Valley City, which is down here in the lower part of Illinois before it connects with the Mississippi, just north of St. Louis. This has a drainage area about 27,000 square miles, somewhat equivalent to South Platte at Roscoe, I believe. And, we actually, looking at the current water year that was just ended, we usually have a lot of water most of the year, and then it starts petering out, somewhere in the summer, getting into the fall in that aspect. So we really have, anywhere, looking out here about on the average, almost 30,000 CFS going around here. But we do experience a little drought. Our most recent drought was in 2012, and we still had kind of our highs, but you can see we didn't get as the overall annual flows were a little lower, and we did get down here into some rather low flows for the Illinois River. In fact, in the upper part of the Illinois River, we have a lot of nuclear power plants that need the Illinois River water for cooling. And we had a real problem because since there was not a lot of water, that water was getting warm, and the power plant obviously is losing cooling water, needs cool water, and then they put in very hot water. And so there was a lot of ecological concerns up in that area. So on occasion, we have problems with water. Oops, sorry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of our brief history on organized water planning in the state of Illinois. This is led by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the Office of Water Resources. Lauren Mobig is the director, and I've put a link in here, and I will forward a PDF of this document so people can research that on their own. Water planning started really in 1967. The Water Survey headed up and organized a multi-agency group and created Water for Illinois, a Plan for Action document. which was really the first attempt to formalize an approach to planning for water. Outside of some very severe droughts in the 1930s and the 1950s, people really felt things were water plenty and didn't really think we needed to plan anything. But that effort was put forward. It was not formally adopted, but it was circulated around in a lot of agencies, and it kind of sat and simmered and stewed for a while. Then in the early 1980s, there was actually an allocation of resources to actually create a group to actually develop a state water plan. If you go to the link to OWR, you'll find one for the Illinois State Water Plan Task Force. But the plan itself is a rather short document, but it's accompanied by at least a dozen major documents that were addressing each of the critical issues and some of the cross-cutting topics, going into a lot more detail about what the state of the information that we had, what they felt the potential problems were, what it was going to take to get that information to plan, and a cost. So there was the huge effort that was put in by the state, and it was adopted in 1984. We do not have regulations and laws that regulate and dictate the water plan. It is really a guidance document that all of the agencies abide by and then participate on the State Water Plan Task Force to make sure that everybody is communicating, that we're all on the same page. One of the things that came out of that in 2011 was also, and it's amazing enough because in 2012 we had a drought, that we formalized a drought preparedness and response plan. Again, a guidance document, but everybody was invested in that, and it is the State Water Plan Task Force that changes over into a drought task force when a drought has been called, and all the agencies participate and agree to the plans. Again, none of this is legislated. It's not in any rules anywhere. This is based entirely on cooperation. Then in 2019, we had a representative from the Office of Water Resources attend the American Water Resources Association annual meeting in Baltimore, where they held a summit on state water plans, and 17 states attended, one of which was Nebraska, to present, what their plans are like, and definitely gave food for thought, and came back and said, it's been a long time since we've had a water plan. And frankly, the agency personnel that developed the 1984 plan and been carrying it on had all started to retire and leave, and some of that institutional knowledge of the importance of the state water plan was somewhat dribbling away. And so this was a wake-up call, and we are currently in an updating process and using the prior plan to template that and coming up with our own list of critical issues. These are the list that we have. They're fairly similar to the 1984 plan, but there's been a lot of information that has been developed since then. The Prairie Research Institute about 2 years ago went ahead and did an update of a management plan that was developed for the Illinois River Basin and updated with our current knowledge and state of what we have in the last 30-ish years. What have we learned? What information do we have that could also be used in these critical issues to figure out where we're going to go? And you also see the list of the agencies that are currently participating on that. One of the things I wanted to highlight was that they're considering integrated watershed management, water management, but really our vehicle that we implement at this point, the state does, is regional water supply planning, which is what I'm going to talk about right now. The water survey has its own water supply planning process, but the regional water supply program is managed by the Office of Water Resources. But we have more of the science approach in this aspect. Here I've also listed the key personnel that are in that program so that in the future you can go ahead and talk to them, as well as the link that goes to the page that shows what we've been working on so far. But as far as Illinois, obviously, you know, Lake Michigan is a major source of water for a major population center, being Chicago and its surrounding areas. I know that it's not similar to Nebraska, so I won't go into that very much. But a lot of the water withdrawals there is dictated by international agreements and a 1967 Supreme Court decree, and that we have a certain amount of a water allocation that we can use for either navigation for that shipping route from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, but also for water consumption and use in that aspect. And then, you know, we have a lot of surface water that is usually used as a source in central and southern Illinois through rivers and streams, but mainly through federal reservoirs and smaller water supply reservoirs. And then groundwater. Dick spoke a lot about that. Groundwater is more plentiful in northern Illinois and some of central Illinois. I'm glad Dick talked about northern Illinois. What I would do is highlight a little bit of the Mahomet Aquifer in central Illinois on some of our work that we've done. But very quickly, the Lake Michigan diversion, we are only allotted 3,200 CFS per year by Supreme Court decree. And this has been water uses back in the 80s and 90s. And then there was a much more concerted effort because our feet were held to the fire to go ahead and reduce our consumption. So a lot was invested in dam leakage and a lot of conservation, and the Metropolitan Sanitary District was also saving water as well. So we've been really reducing what we've been needing. So we have a lot in the bank, so to speak. And Dick did show you this. This is showing the communities in blue that are using Lake Michigan water. Those in brown and yellow are using groundwater, but some there are mixed sources, you know, that are in more of the greenish areas that they're using a combination of both. I said we had plenty of water, but we do have an issue because of the groundwater, because of the geologic mapping that the Geological Survey does, being able to do a lot of potentiometric work, but also be able to keep our thumb on the pulse of what's going on. And this is the Joliet area in Will County that Dick had alluded to. And we have a major drawdown of this aquifer in this area for Joliet and its surrounding communities. We have predicted that in about 15 years, that the demand will not meet the supply. And so there has been a lot of work going on up there that the Water Survey and the Geological Survey are working with, finding alternative uses. So this is our hot button right at the moment, that all of the effort that the Geological Survey and the Water Survey's models have benefit in, because this could have been a very rude awakening. We have 11 water supply planning regions. The Northeast Illinois includes Chicago. This took many years to do, and with the collaboration of a lot of other entities in that area. But we've been working on all of them. The checkmarked ones here on the list are the ones we've finished. We're currently on the lower Illinois region in this for this year. It's will be one by one. This is the priority of the next ones that will be done. So we've taken a long time. This program started working on regional water supply planning in 2006. So we've been at this for quite some time. Our approach for watershed planning of the states is that, you know, OWR establishes, you know, the water supply, the regional water supply stakeholder committees. And this is really all the water users or people who have an interest in the water, either using it or supplying it. And then those stakeholders ultimately will develop regional water supply planning and management recommendations They come up with the current and future water demands that we can use, and that feeds into what the State Water Survey and the Geological surveys do, which is essentially quantifying the available water supply, working with those demands, collecting and interpreting any additional data, and then developing our models and scenarios to estimate for future, usually 50 years out, what are the current trends if nothing changes, is everything stationary, if there's less resource intensive demands based on what are some of the economic profiles are happening, or population densities, or and again, are more resource intensive if they're anticipating a ramp up of those efforts. But essentially, it's a back and forth where the surveys inform the stakeholders and actually teach them what their water resources are. They tell us, what their projections are, what their concerns are. There's an opportunity for stakeholders to talk to each other and learn from each other, to complement their uses and understanding. And then they give us their thoughts of where they think they would like to go, and then we model those scenarios, and it goes back and forth. This is a water withdrawal by sector for the United States. It's similar for Illinois, except we have less irrigation and more thermoelectric power in that aspect. Unlike Nebraska, that we are aware of, we don't have a lot of irrigation. And if it is irrigated, it's from groundwater. It's not surface water. The highest concentrations are here in what we call the Havana, Illinois district. This is sand aquifers, right at the surface, connected with the Illinois River, and so there's a lot of farming in here. So these are a lot of pivots out here, a bit up into some of the, I think it's the sand and gravel up here in the Rock River. We are getting more. Here's Champaign County. This is where the University of Illinois is, and this is where we're located. There's a lot of pivots in here, and they tap into the Mahomet Aquifer. They tap into the Mahomet Aquifer, and most of that is feeding seed corn. So we grow a lot of corn also in Illinois, but this is a popular place for seed companies to grow their seed. And so they have to guarantee that they have water. And so a lot of pivots have been put in Northern Illinois. Just a quick overview that, as I spoke before, in the surface water supply, most surface water are in the central and mostly the southern half of Illinois. And this is really it's mostly the supply of the lakes and reservoirs, but there are some rivers. Two of the major, there's the private or city-run reservoirs are in Decatur, and cities of Decatur and Springfield. Federal reservoirs are in southern Illinois, and I'll show you those in a second. But as you can see, impounding reservoirs is really where we get most of our water outside of Lake Michigan. We have a lot of energy. We have a lot of coal-fired plants, although we're losing a lot of them, but we also have a lot of nuclear. And this is a map just to kind of show you where those are. And usually if there's coal, they're pulling from a lake. If it's nuclear, they're usually pulling from a river. This is Clinton Lake. There's a lake that was specifically built for this nuclear power plant. But mostly up here in Northern Illinois, they're pulling directly from the rivers. So we have just a few that might be pulling from the Mississippi in this aspect. But this is where a lot of our power generation comes from as well. For surface water, our models and tools, and generally for each of the regional water supply planning regions, we use SWOT models. And we use those and build those every time we go into a region, which have been done previously about 20 years ago, and that wasn't SWOT at the time, but there's other hydrologic models. Currently, we're updating everything with SWOT, and we also simulate impact of climate variability, and we can overprint that on the less and the more resource-intensive scenarios that are going on. Some of the tools that we have For current information is Illinois Streamflow Assessment Model. We call it ILSAM. And this shows a lot of the flow frequency and durations, for many of the major river watersheds as things stand at this moment. Doesn't predict for the future, but can predict if everything physically and climatologically stay the same. This is available online. We also have drought vulnerability for our surface water impoundment systems. Those are also available online. This information slowly gets updated as we go through the state. In that aspect. And then we have 7-day, 10-year low flow maps. These are a little older, but these are used by the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, especially when they're putting out NPDES permits and that nature. So these are really nice tools that we have for current situations and helping with planning outside of the specific regional water supply planning efforts. We also have an Illinois drought page, which has a lot of information there. It's when a drought has been declared by the Illinois Task Force, that our webpage changes over then to what some of the current conditions are and resources. And this is what is used by the task force to keep information current and what the agencies can do during that time. I'm putting in the reference here to Jason Zhang. He's our water supply hydrologist with his email, and you can find all these tools and references on this website in the surface water resources page in that aspect. We're also looking at developing maybe some other tools in the future as we can get funded, but we really have some sustainability issues and trying to balance between ecosystem demand and human demand, and really what are some acceptable adverse impacts. How bad can it get? Because when we do have droughts and with the human demands, there is an ecological price to pay in our aquatic systems. Determining maybe a stream classification on those sustainability scenarios, maybe partitioning out between in-stream demand and off-stream demands in order to compartmentalize those a little differently when we look at that. But then continuing our hydrologic modeling and continuing incorporating the future climate variability with the global climate model scenarios. This is the aquifers of Illinois. Dick showed you a lot about northeastern Illinois. We have deep bedrock, which covers the northern third of Illinois. There is a lot of total dissolved solids in here, but mostly what it is, the shallow bedrock and the sand and gravel are the most popular. Dick showed you the aquifers that everybody's using in northeastern Illinois. So in my talk, I'm going to talk about this is the Mahomet Aquifer that stretches from the Illinois River, snakes around through central and east central Illinois over slightly into Indiana. This is the benefit of that Dick was so elegantly put together, is that you need the geology. Even with a lot of the surface water impoundments available in the lower part of the state, there's a lot of private wells, and there are some communities that are very dependent on this major aquifer in the central part of the state. One of them really being the Champaign-Urbana, where we are located. But it is the geology that helps put some of these together, and being able to see some of the bedrock surface and the subsequent geology above that helps with our groundwater models. This is quickly the major surface groundwater suppliers. This is Champaign Urbana in here. We pull out of the aquifer. There's Lake Vermilion out here in Danville, where they have a surface water impoundment. The city of Decatur has a lake, and here's Clinton Lake. This is built specifically just for recreation and cooling pond for a nuclear plant. Lake Bloomington, Evergreen Lake, it's a surface water only impoundment. Lake Springfield, again, surface water impoundment. And then out here, again, this is Havana area where they heavily depend on the aquifer in this area. Just a quick picture of the groundwater demand. We have over 1,500 large capacity wells in this aquifer alone. So it has a lot of rivers that go through that, particularly the Sangamon that runs along in here through the central part of the aquifer and then just runs along the base of the aquifer out to the west. Here's Champaign-Urbana, and here is the high capacity wells that we tap into the Mahomet. The Mahomet Aquifer, is a high quality aquifer. So it's actually some of the best water in Illinois for drinking, for groundwater. This is the observation well network that we have. And a lot of this information is put into the Illinois Water Inventory Program, IWIP. It allows us to bring this well water information in as well as surface water supplies, because we inventory all the water use within the state. And that feeds into our modeling in that aspect. But this tells you, the extent of our network that we have. And there's a potentiometric surface that just kind of shows how deep and shallow that the aquifer can get at any one time. This is July 2009. You can see, some of the contours in here, and this is Champaign-Urbana pulling, on the aquifer in this area. And some drawdowns. This is since 1930 through 2005. We have drawn down this aquifer. It's not where it was at the beginning, and in some places almost 100 feet it has been drawn down. Our groundwater folks have developed the Illinois groundwater flow model. I've gone ahead and put Walt Kelly and Dan Abrams' information in here as contacts, but this is a rendition of the Mahomet Aquifer from the west all the way to the east to Indiana, showing some of the capacities in here. So this is the model that they're using in their efforts to inform a lot of management decisions. Those model has done, for one example, modeled potential impacts of any new high capacity well fields that might be considered. And so they can model into these areas because of the model has been developed for decades. They've been working on this. For surface water, Lake Decatur is kind of our canary in the coal mine. Lake Decatur is fed by a 925 square mile watershed. So it's, but it's rather shallow. It's lost 30% of its storage due to sedimentation, and they just finished a $5 million program to dredge the lake to get almost all of that back again. But it is susceptible to droughts. It's one of the first at-risk reservoirs that we have, and we watch it very closely, especially with it being on the aquifer, because the city of Decatur has wells within the Mahomet Aquifer just northeast of the city, and they will pump from that well into a tributary to supplement water into the lake. So it's a very complex system that we deal with in Central Illinois. So they can actually have some really big issues. As I said, the 1930s and 1950s, we had some substantial droughts in here. But as you can see, one of the things that does happen is that when things change, they recover very quickly because they have a 925 square mile watershed. I've had the operators at City of Decatur tell me that they need, a good gully washer of a rain can come and replace the volume of the lake 3 times, so it can recover very quickly. But it is the first to have problems. This is some of the modeling that we've done actually shows some confidence estimates about its resiliency to drought for different scenarios in this aspect. And we were using the 30-31 drought as our drought of record. For the Mahomet Aquifer, at least for the East Central Illinois Regional Water Supply Planning, here are some of the water demand projections that we were dealing with less resource intensive, a baseline, and more intensive. That between 2005 all the way out to 2050. This is what the scenarios were going to be. And then for the surface water was not going to change too much, but there was room for a little bit of improvement. And these projections went into numbers that were given back to those stakeholders. If I just have a few more minutes, we're almost out of time. I have a video here. It's actually showing for the 2012 drought, the potentiometric surface for the eastern part of the Mahomet Aquifer, and the effect of the irrigation and the water consumption of Champaign-Urbana, what it had on that. I wonder if I can speed this up. Here we go. Let's get into April. The yellow that you see down here is some pumping that the city of Gator had started a little bit, but then you can see as irrigation starts ramping up in June, we're starting to see the drawdown in northern Champaign County and keeps spreading. As the drought keeps getting worse, it'll expand, and we'll start seeing the pumpage from Champaign as well. The Decatur pumpage really kicked in August, and you can see its effect down here in the lower part of your screen, which really drew down the aquifer in that area and almost really overwhelmed the irrigation and was kind of drawing everything towards that end of the aquifer. Okay. That's a broad overview. There's so much detail what goes into the planning that I'd be happy to talk to other folks offline and get you connected with the people who are dealing with each of these particular aspects of the regional supply planning. And if you wanted to give me a call, here's my contact information. And I wanted to close with a picture in that we are agriculture, and we can be pretty darn flat too. So it works in that effort. That's all I had.
Great, thank you, Laura, and thank you, Dick. We know something about flat in Nebraska that looks familiar. Really appreciate that. Thank you for also giving people ways to connect with your staff and also seminars that are upcoming in this topic. So next up, we're just going to transition and talk a little bit from the Nebraska side of things. And we've got a couple of homegrown commentary and remarks from two of our water managers here in the state. I'll quickly introduce them and wanted to just also say that if you do have a question for either Laura or Dick, go ahead and throw it in the chat box, and we'll do our darndest to get to that right after this next segment. So Jennifer Schelpepper is the Water Planning Division Head with Nebraska's Department of Natural Resources, and Dave Russ is a hydrologist with the USGS Nebraska Water Science Center. Dave also shepherds something called the Nebraska Surface Water Monitoring Council, which brings together state, federal, and local agencies that monitor Nebraska's surface water resources. So Jennifer and Dave, you guys can figure out who would like to go first and just offer up your presentations and maybe some general comments back from Dick and Laura's seminar. So over to you guys.
Jennifer, if you want to go ahead.
Sure, I'll go first if that works, Dave. Those were great presentations, and I really appreciate all the information that was shared. I wasn't familiar with what goes on in Illinois, so it was interesting to hear that history and where you're at currently. I particularly found it interesting when you had the slide up about the history of state water planning, that there was a state water planning initiated in 1967 in Illinois, because that's the same exact time frame that we initiated that in Nebraska. And I have a slide very similar to yours, Laura, that has the same sets of dates on it. So we started our state water planning in 1967. Then in the late 70s, early 80s, the legislature redirected the state to look at that again and examine our planning policies, which it sounds like, you know, in the 80s, I think your slide had 84 in it. The same thing happened in Illinois. And at that time, we moved to a very collaborative water planning process and a decentralized planning process in the state of Nebraska. So we have multiple agencies across the state who do water planning, various aspects of both quality and quantity management, done through the Department of Agriculture, through our Department of what was Environmental Quality, but now Environment and Energy, and then the agency that I work with through the state, the Department of Natural Resources, and then also our local natural resources districts. And they're really a key factor in all of the Nebraska planning for water quantity and quality. We have 23 of those across the state. And it's from that local level at the natural resources districts that really drives our planning and drives what we do as far as any controls or regulations on the systems at that local planning base and drives our integrated management planning process. We do recognize, of course, hydrological connections in our state law, which is a wonderful place to have gotten to. It's taken a little while through legislation to get there, but that's where we're operating now, which is a good place to be. I was also interested to hear about your regional planning and your stakeholder processes. Our planning process here in Nebraska does have a very robust stakeholder process involved in all of our integrated water management. We do that with each of those local natural resources districts. We also do that on a basin-wide scale. So we group some of those local districts together when they're in the same basin, and we initiate stakeholder processes there. And usually that's a multi-year process with those stakeholders to develop goals and objectives for our plans. And the goals and objectives of our plans are really driven by some of the things that Dick, you were talking about. So I found that interesting. You talked a lot about how geology was about economics, and some of the core planning in Nebraska really revolves around economic viability, and it's linked to the aquifer, it's linked to the stream flow, and how we balance those components both in the near term and in the long term. So that's very vital to Nebraska's water planning as well. So I found that to be very similar and interesting to hear how Illinois approached that. And of course, a key component of all of that is the data, the science, and the foundation. I heard you both talk about that quite a lot. And so in Nebraska, we've also been doing a lot of work on the 3D modeling, and that's really run by a lot of the local natural resources districts and some coalitions of groups there that involve the USGS, as well as our conservation and survey division folks, putting together a lot of AEM data and those 3D models and making that available for folks across the state. Right now we have some pilot areas where we're taking that detailed geologic information and putting that into our groundwater models. So that's a next phase that we're working on, is that more detailed information, particularly in the glaciated area of Nebraska, which I also found interesting how that related to what's going on in Illinois. And I guess the other point that I wanted to make, you know, talking about the stakeholders and the science and how they come together, a piece that we have in Nebraska is our Insight database and website, where we put out the information that we have about the balance of long-term supplies and long-term demands. And if you hadn't had an opportunity seeing that Insight website, will show those for the various basins across the state. So I think that's an important piece of information that all the stakeholders need when they're making management decisions about water. So those were the couple of points I had, and I know we're short on time, so I'll stop right there. And Dave, your turn.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. And yes, I concur. I really enjoyed those presentations. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Yeah, so a lot of what Jennifer already said were things that I was thinking of pointing out as well. was looking at those regional water supply planning divisions that Laura was looking at, and thinking how those maybe are analogous to our NRD boundaries in some ways. But our NRD boundaries tend to follow a drainage basin, and perhaps the ones in Illinois do as well, and that tends to impact how we study it. And maybe I should back up a little bit. You know, I'm with the USGS, so we don't specifically manage as much as we try and provide science to those that do make those management decisions. And so we do work with NRDs, we work with DNR and federal and other state agencies to try and provide that information that helps them with those decisions, such as how much pumpage to achieve or before certain results may occur, such as in the stream or otherwise, balancing those economic needs with the ecological needs. And Dick had also mentioned one of the things I noted, a need that had arisen with the mapping coalition there, was access to uniform and unbiased data. And one of the things that we have worked on towards that, and we're just a partner, and Jennifer even mentioned this, was the GeoCloud project. And that's where we try and compile the AEM data, the borehole data, other types of data, to all kinds of, from all kinds of different sources, and pull it together into one source so that it's publicly available to all folks that want to use it. And I have a website that I'll just post in the chat that goes to that, in case you're interested in some more information. But it does compile a lot of AEM data, and that's the other thing. I don't have a presentation set up, but I will send a map as well through the chat for those that want to see that. And when you look at where the AEM data is, you'll notice that it is very heavily in the eastern part of the state. And that's relevant because that's more the glacial part of our state, as opposed to the high plains dominated part of our state in the central and western Nebraska. And our science is basically adapting to where that need is. And I believe a lot of the lessons that we're learning in eastern Nebraska, there's probably analogous lessons from related to the glacial regions of Illinois. So we try and take all of this data and put it into our groundwater models to try and get the best understanding of those connections to wells, to streams, to confining units and whatnot. But yeah, and that's really what I had to say. There's time. I think probably folks have questions for the speakers, so I'll just leave it for that.
Great, thank you, Dave and Jennifer, and thanks for bringing up a couple of the nice projects and resources that we have here in Nebraska. We had two questions come in. They're somewhat similar, so I think what Chittaranjan and Jennifer are really getting at is, and these questions are for both Dick and Laura, you know, once you're done with these different studies, both the geologic 3D data and other scientific studies, who in Illinois really implements them, and then how do you make that data, how do you deliver it to the water managers across the state?
Well, okay, I'll start. Delivering it, we've got a clearinghouse which has a lot of information on it, which is publicly available, and that contains a lot of maps and information. And, you know, we dump a lot of information is there. But who implements it? Well, the regulators implement it. The EPA, they've written regulations based on our information. The work we've done up in McHenry County is, for example, is used by water resource managers for land use decisions. They've used it by counties to restrict lot sizes so you can reduce septic loadings on aquifers. And I think what I find amazing is we never know exactly how the information is going to be used. And, you develop a map for one reason, and then people are using the information for something completely something else. I remember getting a call from a consultant one day, and he was asking me about we have a map for the state that looks at aquifers within 20 feet and 50 feet of the surface. And he says, "Do you know that this is written into state law?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And he went, and then I ended up talking to the EPA, and the EPA says, "Oh yeah," he says, "Abraham Lincoln is not mentioned in state statutes, but you're mentioned there 9 times now." I went, "What?" So I mean, and that was based on depth to aquifers and whether or not you would be conducting certain studies in order to do Yanka tanks for underground leaking underground storage tanks. So they wrote it directly into state law. So there's all kinds of things how we're tied into, county regulations and ordinances and state laws, and hopefully we work with these groups to make sure that they use the information correctly. That's sometimes challenging, but the information's used a lot. Laura?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Dick had talked about, as well as the surveys put out their own reports. They're not papers for journals, things of that nature. We have a tendency sometimes to throw everything in the kitchen sink in them, but part of the regional water supply planning process is that we produce these reports, but then we speak with the stakeholders that have been gathered multiple times to get them to understand exactly what we've done, why we've done it, why are the scenarios coming out the way they are, what they need to start thinking about as each one of them, be it mayors or a power plant or the water supplier, decide to how move forward from there. And because they've been coordinated in the stakeholder groups, they do know what their complementary or conflicting demands are, and that they have to really work together. Again, and then two, the surveys haven't been around for 100+ years for nothing. We have the experience, we have the information, we have the institutional knowledge, and we have the people that they can call on and say, "Hey, you got this report 20 years ago. Could somebody come talk to us about it, and get us up to speed on what we need to think about?" And we're out there. So, so we supply the information, we inform the users, the managers, the regulators, with the best science we can in a most understandable form so they can manage. And it keeps us separate, and we can really concentrate on that quality information and be able to be out there to teach and keep that going.
Yeah, that's a good point, Laura. And the issue that we face coming into the university is, when you're part of a university, there's a real emphasis on peer-reviewed journal articles. Chittaranjan, you're well aware of that. And the information that Laura is talking about, university refers to as gray literature, but it is actually more extensively peer-reviewed than any journal article that there could possibly be. And Dave, you at the USGS, you know what you have to go through to publish things within the USGS. That that gray literature ends up being so incredibly reviewed by so many people, but it's kind of looked at kind of strangely by the university community. But it is the bread and butter of what it is that we produce. Same with your geological survey in Nebraska. You produce great information, and a lot of it is considered gray literature. And universities don't like to do mapping. We do mapping. Water Survey does mapping, all kinds of flood mapping. And you didn't go into all the stuff that Sally McConkey does with flood mapping. You talk about an exercise that directly supports economic development of the state and hazards. I mean, wow. I mean, it's incredible. So, I mean, that is, you're working directly with municipalities and counties and answering their questions and really being part of their team. And that's really an important part.
Well, thank you guys. Thanks for the question and for those answers. We're about out of time, but I always like to at least give one last opportunity if somebody has a burning question that they would like to ask. And at this point, you can feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat box. I hear a keyboard clicking. In the meantime, I'm going to include a link to the Nebraska Water Center's YouTube page in the chat box. We were recording this seminar, and there was a lot of really great information shared by all the speakers and links to follow up with people. So we will post a video of this on our YouTube channel, hopefully by the end of the week, and then distribute it out to all the people who registered. So I think with that, I'll give you a Zoom hand clap, and just want to thank both Dick and Laura and Jennifer and Dave for your time this morning and for your presentations. And we will hopefully see you sometime in Illinois, or we'd like to have you as guests here in Nebraska.
And if you have any questions, I can, speak for Laura here, please, contact us. We do a lot of collaborative things with other states, and we work with them. We work a lot with Indiana and Michigan, and, you're just only one state over. So, feel free, anytime you have a question or a concern, if we can help in any way, we're happy to.
We have a water and natural resource tour. Actually, I don't know when it was in Illinois. But I'm still thinking that some of the things you showed, the navigation, the Lake Michigan, the power plants and all those kind of things, we can work with you on that down the road. I don't know when, but maybe a few years down the road, we can think about that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chittaranjan, and thanks everybody for your time.
Thank you. This was a great talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.